Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Swampland Outdoors. We're out here this evening in the shop sweating and trying to make up a few gar jugs. We got a gar trip coming up this Saturday. We're going to try to catch some big gar, so me and Dirtman's out here making them up, cutting and splicing and crimping and tying and twisting, and seeing what we can come up with. Got to make it strong enough so this big gar, if we do get them hooked, they don't come off. So Dirtman's working on a crab pot floater. This is our favorite type of jug we like to use. I think the reason it's real popular with us is a gar can't bite it. A lot of times when a gar gets hung up, he'll get mad at that jug. He'll turn around and start biting that jug, and a lot of times they'll knock holes in Sprite bottles, juice jugs, and once they bite holes in them and they start pulling them under, it starts filling up with water, and eventually they get away from you. And you don't want that to happen. That's no good. So what you got going there? How long a line you working with?
Right here, we're looking at about probably 6 to 10 foot, somewhere in that area. Gotta give them enough room to feel like there ain't nothing on the end of it. There ain't no resistance whatsoever.
You tying any kind of fancy Kalamazoo knot on there, or what kind of knot?
Hatchet knot.
I had an old iron worker tell me one time, he said, if you can't tie a knot, tie a lot.
That's right. And that's usually working, you know.
It's worked the past few years. So while he's working on that, I wanted to show one of these. This is a good option too if you don't want to spend the money on a crab pot floater. I like to use these old oil jugs. Now, some people use juice jugs and milk jugs, but they're so thin, like I said, those gar will bite through them and puncture them. I like these oil jugs. They're real thick and they already have a handle. It gives you a couple different places to tie on. One thing you want to do is clean it out real good. Even after you drain all the oil out, there's usually some residue in there. What I'll do is I'll take it and I'll stick it in a pallet over a bucket, and I'll let it sit like that for maybe a week or 2 weeks, and just let everything get hot and run out. And after that's done, I'll take some Dawn dishwashing soap and rinse it out real good. And by the time I'm done, you can drink out of it. That way, if it does get punctured, you don't put no oil in the water, and you're not hurting the environment. If you do decide to use one of these oil jugs or anything similar, I recommend getting some Gorilla Glue or something of the sort, and take you and put you a bead. Put you a bead of that Gorilla Glue. A good healthy dose all the way around the edge of it in the threads. And then put it on. Usually it's going to run down some, that's alright. The main thing is you want it to seal up. Get it good and firm. Let that sit about 24 hours, 36 hours. It takes a little preparation if you're going to do some serious gar fishing. It's just not something you jump up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to go gar fishing today. What's today, Monday? Monday, and we're already trying to prepare for a trip Saturday. So definitely want to get some time in advance. And once that dries, I'll come back and I'll tie it to the top handle.
Okay, well, we're showing y'all the line off your bobber. I'm just showing that I got a little bit of a lead in here onto a swivel. I do a bowling knot with 2 half hitches behind it. Does pretty tight, just my preferred choice.
I like to take it, same thing, coming off the float, come all the way down to the hook end, and I like to do about 4 half hitches. And each one I'll tighten it as hard as I can. Put another one on top of it, tighten it, put another one on top of that, tighten it, and do at least 4 or 5. And that way they lock each other down, and that's just my preferred method. I'm going to show you how we make up our leaders. This is some 140-pound Malin stainless steel wire. I'll take it, I'll cut anywhere from 2 to 4 feet, just kind of depending on where we're going to be fishing and the size of gar we're targeting. So being that we're going for big gar, I'm going to be going a little bit overboard on everything we make. Alright, so we're making up these leaders for the end of those jugs. You'll take that 2 to 4 foot stainless steel wire. This is a 140-pound test. You're going to grab your hook of choice, anywhere from 2 to 7/0, depending on the size of gar that you're targeting. I like to use these treble hooks. You're going to take that wire and run you about 4 inches through that eye, and then bend it back. Now you don't want to kink it. You don't want such a sharp bend. You want a good rolling bend. You're going to come back and cross itself. Then you're going to take some pliers. You're going to hold that in, and you want to spin both legs around each other. You don't want one leg going around the other leg. You want them both to be equally spinning. Kind of like a bread tie. You're going to get you about 4 or 5 of those even twists. Once you get 4 or 5 of those, then you'll take this leg and you'll wrap that leg around the main line. This is the main line going to your jug. And this is your leg. Take that leg, get you about 4 spins. At that point, I'll usually readjust these pliers. Get up real tight. And roll that leg around there, around that main line about 4 or 5 times. The final result is a slow sweeping bend, a decent eye, about 4 to 5 twists of both legs twisting together, and then you'll take that empty leg and wrap it around the main line. That kind of locks that in. You got it looking like that. Take you some wire cutters. Cut off the end, and voila. Alright, so we got our leader made up, 2 to 4 feet. You're going to take that leader and you're going to run it, before you hook it to this swivel, you're going to run it through your bait. All kind of stuff to use for bait. We're not going to get into that today. There's so many different options when it comes to bait. You're going to run it through your bait, and then you're going to connect it to your swivel that you already have on your line coming from your float. At that point, you'll roll it up good and tight, good and even, good and tight. Depending on how deep you want to fish, which this weekend we're expecting the water to be real muddy. So we're probably going to fish real shallow, maybe 3 to 5 feet. With this leader being already 3 feet, we'll probably leave about a foot or so of line. That'll put our bait about 4 to 5 feet from the top. Being real muddy, I think the fish are going to be feeding up a little higher where it's lighter and you can use the sunlight. Once he rolls it up on that last leg, when he comes back around, you're going to use this clothespin to barely hook it. Now this is the water level. His hand's the water level. It's floating along in the current, coming around the sandbar. The gar comes along 4 to 5 feet below the water, strikes the hook, and what happens is he triggers that clothespin. And once that happens, this stays on top of the water, and it just starts unrolling. He's just barely pulling, unrolling. It gives him time to scale. He's still scaling it. All right, I like it. Boom. Hits the fish head first. At that point, he's ran out of line. Now he's going along, and he feels a little something. Boom. He goes to pull. At that point, it sets the hook. Got him. And it's all over but the chasing then. Hey y'all, we call this the gar winch. This is 15 feet of fishing pole. We've got a 25-pound drag pin open cast with 300 yards of 80-pound braid on it. This is 44 inches per rotation. That's 44 inches of line being pulled up every time this crank goes around 360 degrees. I'll take that braid and run it out and make up a leader 2 to 3 feet, just like we make up for the jugs. And while the jugs are marinating, we'll run it through a bait, hook it on the swivel on the end of this line, and put a slip bobber. Let it fish anywhere 3 to 6 foot deep, depending on the clarity of the water. If the water's clear, you want to fish a little deeper. If the water's muddy like we're expecting, we're going to come up and fish a little shallower. And depending on the size of the bait is the size of the floater we're going to use. As long as we can keep that bait where we want it, we'll be good. So y'all stay tuned. You won't want to miss this fight.